Lucky Boys Podcast.
Welcome to Lucky Boys Podcast. I'm Will.
I'm Norm, and we have a very special guest here today with us, Don Lee, a community activist, advocate for small business in Chinatown.
Yeah, homeboy from Chinatown.
Yep.
Thank you for inviting me, guys.
I love it, man. You know, when we're coming in here, we hear you're on the phone and you're setting up things with the community right now. You're just a busy guy doing so many things of what's going on. There's a protest or a rally going on today, and you're supporting all of these local restaurants. You're talking about spending X amount of dollars here on this bakery and going to the fruit stands over there. I mean, how do you just...
You're juggling a lot today.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I can help. I think it's always teamwork. China Mac, what China Mac is doing and what Will is doing, and it's phenomenal. So glad to be able to help out with that process and just connect people here. I mean, it's so important that, beyond just the money, the fact that people, the small business realize that someone that actually cares for them, that's the most important thing. That's priceless.
You were saying something before we went live to me, and it really resonated with what Chinatown is. I think a lot of people are seeing signs, just the headline saying "Save Chinatown, Save Chinatown," and you're saying this is not a charity.
No, absolutely. That's one of the things that we've been talking about. We don't need a handout. We just need proper policy. We just need customers, right? Most folks in Chinatown would be perfectly happy just to do their own work, and they don't really. They would like to rather to support other causes than to be receiving money if they have their way.
As much as Chinatown's struggling right now, and it's not a secret, right, due to COVID and all of the damn rumors about COVID and Chinese people specifically, or Asians, because I know that not only Chinese businesses are hurting, but mostly Asian businesses in general. They're just catching some of the hate along with us, because they can't. People don't care if you look Asian. You're just gonna get some of that.
Yeah, it's sad. I mean, that's what very early on I said. Wait a minute, we don't wear a mask, we got punched. We wear a mask, we got punched. So obviously, the mask is not the issue, right?
No.
So, and I think that's where much
issue.
deeper rooted issue, and that's when it first happened. And people say, "What do you mean? What discrimination?" I'm like, "Really? You don't see the hate?"
Right.
Right. I mean, read the news, right?
And that being said, I don't see in Chinatown anyone with a cup shaking some coins asking for money or asking them to do anything. I've been so impressed with the businesses in Chinatown saying, if you don't want food here, go support my guy down there.
That's right.
Go. If you don't, I don't sell that, but they sell that over there. Why don't you eat over there if you want that type of food? I mean, just that to me, just holy shit. What, the spirit. I know a lot of the times people may say Asians are totally like a crabs in a bucket mentality, how we pull each other back. And I don't disagree with that. In some cases, it's very true. We kind of touched on that earlier.
I would say at the leadership position, unfortunately, that's very true. I think on the common folks on the street, they're pulling for each other.
Right.
Right. So, so we separate those two tiers.
Right. So the common folks on the streets, we have each other's backs. We're each other's brothers, sisters. We get it. And I love seeing that community. That is the type of community that's what restores the faith back into us as a people.
Right.
Now, you touched on leadership, having that type of bucket. Can you elaborate on that?
It's, someone mentioned the whole idea is that when one of the crab, you walk down Canal Street, you see people selling bushels of crabs, right? That's the whole concept.
Right.
They never need a cover on it, because when one crab tried to get out, the other would just pull them back.
Right.
So that's really what we're talking about. And a lot of things that happens in Chinatown, unfortunately, you see that at the leadership level. When I first started able to do some work in the community, I remember distinctively some of the more progressive folks, you have the traditional family association where I grew up as a kid. Then now I am also crossing the border with these other guys, right? I remember one thing they said to me was, Don, these old fogies, right? All they do is just have dinner with themselves, and they talk amongst themselves, and they don't really care about anybody else. And it's always the same set of people. You're going to notice that. So now it's like 20 years later, and I look back, the same people that said that to me, I'm like, you just described nothing changed. You guys did the same. You guys are also talking amongst yourself and really not, risk or take a chance to speak out, even though when things are really need you guys to come out.
Nobody knows who you are for the most part. Well, I know I didn't.
did.
Well,
I
you
did.
My bad. Well, I didn't. And as soon as you spoke, after the second sentence, you really grabbed my attention. I went to reach for my phone. I was like, holy, making sure everything is good. And I'm recording you. And at a certain point, maybe 30 seconds in, I stopped looking at my phone and I catch myself just looking at you because I just felt this energy, this surge of what you were saying, this honesty and this, I can feel the leadership and the power behind your voice resonate throughout the crowd. And as I turn around, I can see everyone else, it's kind of surrendering their phones down a little bit. Everyone usually has it up covering their face. But as you were talking, I see it going down a little. People's like, who is this guy? And then I can hear them rally behind you. I can hear the crowd being empowered by your voice. And that's when I say, we have people like this. People are complaining that we don't have Asian leaders. We don't have Asians that are in this community doing this thing for real. And well, I'm looking at one right now in front of me and I'm going, holy shit. Like, people need to know about this guy. Number one, you're super interesting. Number two, you're born and bred from this community and you're still here and you're fighting back and you're helping everybody else out here.
Yeah, and then it also highlights like you're from the older generation, right? While the events and the rally was organized by the younger generation. So there's that gap, but then you're kind of bridging that gap as well.
No, I'm just glad that I was able to take part, really. There's a lot of, like you mentioned, there's been a lot of, the Chinese people don't report crime. And that's why, hey, that's really what upsets me more than anything else, right? It's instead of talking about the issue that impacting us, instead of just saying equal justice, you hear people victimizing the victim a second time. In this case, our own community as a whole. We don't do this. We don't do that. We don't vote. We don't register. Well, 50% of people still have not registered for the census. Are they all Chinese people that didn't register for the census? The rest of New York didn't either, right? But when that happened, it's always, you guys don't vote. You guys don't protest. You guys don't stand up. Absolutely not true. I've been fighting for people, not just by myself. You don't win anything by yourself. It's with the community for at least 20 some odd years. And it's just that it doesn't get covered. Or it just, we fought the Grand Street to make sure that things happen. That, if I can share you that little bit, that's really how I really get started in community activism. In 2000, I was in committee report number 2, and I'm reading the agenda for the meeting. We're going to have a presentation on MTA. And it was that we're fixing up the train stations on Spring Street. So I said to them, why are you fixing up the station on Spring Street? That's great. He said, oh, because we're closing the Grand Street station. I'm like,
no.
Yeah, I said, for how long?
There's so much traffic that goes through.
So much
That's
traffic.
right.
Yeah.
So he says, that's okay. You guys can walk.
What?
He
Who
said
says
it out.
He said that.
The MTA
The
says
MTA guy says, it's not that far. You guys can walk.
No, it's far.
And I'm like,
It's
no
far.
way.
That's a far walk.
How about him take the walk himself?
Right?
Especially when you have an older generation in the community as well.
Well, I went to Seward Park High School, so
Yeah.
I know how far Seward Park is. And I know because they have a ESL class, there are students who would come over, take the train.
Yeah.
How are they going to walk all the way from Canal Street? Used to be Grand Street, is pretty far.
Right.
But now from Canal Street to Seward Park.
Right. That's a hell of a walk.
Or the seniors having to take the train from Brooklyn to Canal Street.
Exactly.
Now they're the walk to...
Right.
And I'm
with,
like, wait a
and with
minute.
all the groceries or when they're coming from work and
That's
they're
right.
tired and they're going, depending on what time of day, it could be very dangerous for them going through that long stretch because at certain times it could be activities there. So
Right.
you want to reduce those odds.
Right? So in my lifetime, if you will, right, in the last one, Chinese Americans been standing up to fight. It's just that no one want to talk about it, right? But it bothers me that every time we come to fight for something, they victimize the victim a second time. Well, you guys, this has happened. You deserve it because you guys don't stand up for yourself. I say, no. We've been standing up, right? We've been fighting. We won. but people don't want to talk about it. I'm so glad that you guys I think new media is really going to make the difference, right? With you guys around, a program like yours to allow our story to be told, because God knows the mainstream media really don't care.
I don't know how you do it. I get so frustrated when I hear all of these injustices and this constant movement of discrediting Asians or just kind of shoving us aside, right? A perfect example is when Patrick Mock was speaking and sharing his frustrations with what's going on. And de Blasio in the mid-sentence turns his back on him and walks away. He okays, nods, and then turns away mid-sentence. And that is kind of what Asian Americans or Asians in general feel when they're trying to voice their opinion or something, when they're giving their input. We get out, they turn their backs on us. It's like, you guys aren't allowed to speak up. We want you to remain quiet. We want you to be the nail that doesn't stick out.
Right.
Because if you do, we're going to give you the hammer.
Right.
Right.
On one hand, going back, like talk about the leadership problem that we have. People are saying, well, the model minority myth. Right. But then if you look at the same leadership that we have, I said, aren't you guys living it? Right. The fact that you're not standing out at the rallies, the fact that you're not coming out to speak out, aren't you kind of
being the model
minority, right? Or you
point.
guys. So, and I see that. I think I'm lucky enough to have a very understanding wife that allow me to do this.
You and I both.
Thank you, wife. Right. And I think also growing up in Chinatown, I think that's really gets me, from as a kid that went to PS 130. And I remember after school, we were hanging out to buy candies at a candy store on Bayard Street. And the tour bus would come by. And then all these visitors from Chinatown will take out the camera and start taking pictures of us.
Right.
As if we...
Like you guys are animals in a zoo.
In the zoo, right? And it's, look at this Chinese boy, blah, blah, blah. Do you guys speak English? I'm like, so you live through that. And then you deal with the craziness where, we're right by the detention center. And I remember when they bust some of these guys to Rikers Island.
The one by Columbus Park?
Yeah, by Columbus Park. So they would open the window and they'd be just shouting at us, right?
Oh, yeah, I got those
but again...
when I was a kid.
But the thing is that, right, you get
the
that
racist,
part.
yeah.
But then as a child, you would understand, well, those guys are
criminals.
So-called criminals. So we don't take too much. But the educated one coming down on a bus...
A tour
treating
bus.
us the same way.
Yeah.
So as a child, you begin to see like, does anyone speak for us?
Yeah.
Right? Definitely not so where's this? You look at the two spectrum of society, like no one give a shit.
And that's crazy because you are from a completely different generation than me growing up in Chinatown, right? And I didn't grow up in Chinatown, but I came to Chinatown as a teenager. And it's crazy that you share that story because I can 100% relate because that's what I experienced as well. I would be at the park playing basketball or we're just walking out and then when the tour bus comes, the tour bus and then they see Chinatown, they're going, oh, look at these Chinese people.
Right. Yep.
Oh, look, they can speak English too. And I'm going, what the heck is that? And then also with the detention, with people getting prepared to get shipped off to Rikers, they see they're going through China. Oh, you're fucking Chanks.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, you Chinese motherfuckers.
Right.
And they're saying crazy stuff. And I mean, number one is it's they got a lot of hate inside. I mean, obviously, where they're going. But so what we did as kids, I mean, I hung out with a couple of guys that were pretty rebellious too.
All right.
We would, especially during Halloween, when we see those tour buses. Eggs were coming out. I mean, big tradition in Halloween is to throw eggs. And as a teenage kid, who to do it more than people being racist towards you? So we would definitely, that was our way of fighting back.
That was your protest.
It's a crazy time.
Yeah.
But growing up in that generation, I remember, we always feel like we have to represent because in school, it was half Italian, Italian kids. Then you have the Latino kids and then African Americans.
And just to
and
clarify,
Chinese
you went to
kids.
school in Harlem, right?
When I grew up in Harlem for
Yeah.
a couple. Then I went down. Then I went to PS 130. So they
Right.
said, "Oh, you better come down here," because I was raised by a single parent. So basically, it was really difficult for dad to take the train up.
Right.
We don't get to hang on the street at all. So when we moved back down to Chinatown, that's really get more acclimated. And even then in Chinatown, Little Italy was still there. I live on Hester and Mott.
Right.
So that was at that time considered Little Italy. You don't call that Chinatown.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't call that Chinatown. Yeah, so
That's where the San Gennaro Fair is, like the whole.
That's right.
They set up there.
St. Anthony's Feast and all those things. So,
Right.
and so and I remember then all of a sudden, you get into these fights, and I remember telling my, so when China Mac mentioned they tell you what you got to do is fight. It's like, yeah, when I was in fourth grade, this kid kept picking on me, Enzo. Hey Enzo, we become best friends.
Best friends
We become
after
best friends
fights?
after
Or-
fights.
Yeah,
That's
always,
true.
always,
Always,
always the
right?
case.
So I'm in fourth grade.
I got a lot of best friends.
Right? And my teacher's like, I said, hey, this kid keep picking on me. He goes,
You gotta throw it down.
you got to do what you got to do.
That's true.
And so, I said, but promise you're not going to tell my dad because I'll get a beating much worse when I get home, right? So the teacher's got to do anything. So, so you earn your reputation in that one fight.
Right.
Yeah.
And but that's what it is. You got to stand up and fight. So as a child growing up in Chinatown, you see that injustice, that people don't really see you as a person,
Yeah.
right? Nobody sees you as a person, right? Not the guys coming
And if
off
they
the-
do, they don't look at you as an equal. They don't look at you like an equal person. They look at you like your worth as a human being is valued so much less.
Yeah, well, that's why, going back to when we open up this talk about what the business here actually are looking for. They don't want a handout. Just like I don't need people's sympathy. None of us, the kids, needed that. We don't need people to harass us.
We don't need your
We don't
pity.
you need your pity. We just want to be equal like everybody else,
That's it.
right? And I think that is really what people sometimes don't get. They think immigrants automatically, all the negative stereotypes come with it. But immigrants are the strongest people by definition.
The hardest working people.
The hardest working. By definition, these guys said, I'm going to try something else. I don't speak the language, no problem. I have no money, no problem. I'm going to bring my family to this foreign
Yeah, I
land.
mean, my
and do
dad
something.
worked. My
Right.
dad and my mom worked in Chinatown. My mom was a seamstress. My dad worked in a fortune cookie factory. Sometimes I wouldn't even see them until like 9 p.m. And we already had dinner with my grandparents. My grandparents basically raised us, me and my sister. And my parents worked in Chinatown. Hardworking, 7 a.m. in the morning, 9 p.m. at night, every single day. No weekends. Every single day, even including
Rain,
weekends.
sleet, snow, shine,
Yeah.
sick,
Yeah.
cold. Yeah.
And they don't complain. They're just like, hey, I just want a better future for the next generation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's it. So just that hope. Some of the cases that I work on with the local street vendors, when they got arrested, they were not worrying about, gee, I have to pay the fine. They're like, I'm not going to be able to get home to have dinner with my grandmother. They're waiting for me. I'm like, really? That's what you were worrying about? He goes, yeah, because, we work all this hard for what? It's about family. I want to be able to get there. It's about
dog.
family,
It's about family.
right? So this other lady who was arrested like 11 times in 3 months and was arrested 3 times a year for 10 years.
Was this the laundromat?
This is one of the street vendors on Canal Street.
Okay.
And her husband was after she married her husband, he became wheelchair bound. She would collect money for him. He's a legitimate licensed street vendor. But because she is the wife and not the holder, when she collect money, the cops would arrest her.
Oh my God.
Because that was the law then.
Right.
That was the law then. So when the street vendor said, you really got to help this lady out, because she's been arrested 3-4 times a year for 10 years.
Wow.
But this one time, she was arrested 11 times, right? This is like 3-4 years ago, I think. So I said to her, the first thing I said, are you bullshitting me? Like, the question I said, why now? If you're telling me you've been arrested 3-4 times a year for the last 10 years, and now you're arrested 11 times, why do you want to fight now? You didn't fight all this time. She said to me, because I'm tired of when I go home and if I would go home late, my kids would say to me, "Mom, did you get arrested again?"
Fuck, man.
Right? So she said just on that alone. So she wasn't fighting because money, all this stuff. But like shit, she just say, "I don't want my kid to say, 'Mom, did you get arrested?'" She said, "No, I'm not gonna take this anymore. I'm fighting this one out."
Yeah.
And at the same time, talk about inequality. Something happened in this Jerry, the newspaper guy, bought a newsstand in the East Village, and you cannot transfer the license for that. So Jerry from Eastern Europe gets all the cops and everyone doing the hearts. We support Jerry, give him the license, and eventually they did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, wait a minute. So Jerry is also illegally, not unbeknownst to him, but gets the special treatment. But this woman gets arrested
Jerry's
11 times. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm like, the same cops that are going over there, "We love you," and it's posted, are the same one that are arresting this lady in Chinatown.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm
They
like,
need
hey, man.
it sounds part of it too. They need that. She's an easy quota stop.
All of those guys were, and then I'm glad that we fought it, thanks to, my Asian woman warrior lawyer, who pro bono, Julia Kwan, and then we went to court. And that year, I'm not a lawyer, I'm in IT.
Right.
We probably fought 11 cases, got people all
Jesus
acquitted.
Christ. And just for those listening and watching right now, I do want to say, I was always heard rumors of the quota, just on a sidebar here, but we've confirmed it with a couple of officers that we know, and specifically Steve Lee, who is a current police officer for the department, also said he went into detail about that in one of our previous podcasts. So you guys can circle back and check on that. But that's why, I was always hesitant to mention that because I was just never
Sure.
100% sure. And before I get 100%, where I get someone to conclusively say that, no, this is exactly it coming from their mouth, I can't really commit or share that information. But since he put it out there in the universe and he told me straight up during our previous podcast, no, there is absolutely a quota system. He said it with no apologies. And then just listening to your story and connecting the two, if I'm a police officer, I want to make sure that I have to be a good cop, to be a good soldier, so to speak. I need to have my stops in a row, and that's the problem with that, because then it dehumanizes people. You look at everyone as just a number to help benefit yourself. So you joined for a better cause to stop criminals. But meanwhile, think about what you're doing and how you've been conditioned. Now you're just worried about hitting your numbers the easy way. You're going for the low-hanging fruit, and that is not right. That is not right. You're disrupting people that are trying to make a living for themselves. They're not doing criminal activities. And you know what? I'll be fine if Jerry got tickets too. Okay, if Jerry got a ticket too, then I'll be fine. But then to pick on immigrants or pick on minorities or pick on people that live in lower income areas because those are low hanging fruit, or people known with lack of resources to fight back, that's never okay. But for some reason in our society, it happens. And it's not just New York. This happens everywhere. And it's not just Asians. It happens to other people of color.
Right. That's right.
God damn it, it gets me so mad because how do we fight these people back? Because when we try to say something, nobody fucking listens until we all get up together and what's going on right now. And it needs to take the death of one person and then another person and another person for you to finally, how many lives does it take for you to fucking open your ears? Or is it the money?
Right. Is criminal justice a job? That's what people need to ask. Is it checking a box? Is it doing your quota? Is that what it is? I think that's why we need to have real serious discussion about criminal justice reform, because it can't be just one little thing. This is the moment people need to look like the example I just gave you. And so I said to these guys, right, the street vendors, and I'm like, why do you think they pick on you? All right, one of the other guys. And he says, because we try to be law abiding. There's two reasons why they pick on us. Number one, we are licensed. So they know that if you don't play along, you might lose your license.
You might lose
number
your
one.
license. Yeah.
Number two, many of these guys are still not yet U.S. citizens, and if you get convicted, you can be deported.
Right. Yeah.
So they were telling them, and I was in court with them. I was so pissed off. I thought I was going to get arrested that day.
Yeah.
I walk in there, and this legal aid lawyer representing this vendor said to him, "Mr. Lee, you think you're doing her a favor? You think you're doing her a favor? If she does not take the plea, she is going to be deported. Her kids are born here, her husband's a U.S. citizen. She will never see her kid. You want to help them? Is that what you want?" And I just looked at him. I'm like, you know what? She'll decide. And I talked to this lady and I said, what are you going to do? All right? This is what he's laying out. Either you're going to stand up and fight, or you're going to continue to arrest you, because they know
They could harass you.
They know how they can get you, because they're going to come back again and again and says, if you don't take the plea deal, you could be deported. On that alone, they get everyone taking plea deals.
Right.
Right? So she looked at me and she goes, are you going to promise you're going to fight? I'm like, yeah. And so she turned around and says, not guilty.
Fuck yeah.
Wow.
All right? Not guilty.
But that
You know?
goes to show that she was just looking for an advocate, someone who can, fight with her, for her. And it took some time to find someone like you to do that in the community, because we were talking, we just don't think that people will fight for each other in the not just
community.
not just the Chinese community, the Asian community.
Asian community.
right.
So if you have people to fight for you, and you know that you have that confidence that this guy to the left of me, this person to the right of me, they're gonna fight for me.
So that's why when you guys walk down Canal Street, you look at those street vendors. I'll show you one more story. That's why people say, why are you so attached to them? And I said, when I hear their stories, it's just really, it resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
So there's one case where this gentleman, street vendor, someone stole his goods, and then he was getting into an altercation. NYPD show up. What did they do? As they should, right? Crowd control. He goes, all right, everyone go to the station house. So he's arrested. The perpetrator's arrested. They're all in the 5th precinct. So these guys that come to me and say, Don, you got to help out. You got to help out. I said, what's going on? He says, then I walk into the precinct, and they said, your friend, that fucking chink, he's like, be a man. He's crying like a baby.
What?
like-
Who
The
says
cop- the
this?
cop?
The cop?
The cop. I'm like,
Man,
So
this
I'm like-
motherfucker right here.
why is this guy, honestly, I'm like, dude, you got arrested. You don't need to cry. Like, what's with that? So the chink part I didn't like.
Yeah.
But the things like, why you, so I went and talked to him. I said, why are you crying? It'll be all right. What are you going to do to you? It'll be all right. And he said to me, and this is going back 15, 16 years, more than that at least, not longer.
It's 1980s, 1970s?
80s.
80s. Okay.
So he said to me, late 80s. So he said to me, I'm not here to worry about money. He says, I work so hard to save enough money so that I can bring my son over here to this country. If I have an arrest record, I will not be able to be reunified with my family again.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm crying.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It wasn't the money, it wasn't this freaking jail. It was the idea that if I'm falsely accused and then now I cannot be reunited with my family, everything I work for is for my family, right? And that's when I look at these guys, I say, how many people would know that about these guys? What are they fighting for? For the family, all right? To me, these are like the strongest people. And, they inspire me to keep doing this, all right? To just help out where I can, so. But those are the stories that people don't know about.
And that's the problem with dismissing. When you just look at people and you right away just want to shame them and make them look like, oh, he's less of a man because he's crying. You know what? He's being more of a man because he's crying.
Yeah.
He's being way more of a man. He's worried about taking care of his family, his kids, and bringing them over. He took the risk of leaving to someplace else for better opportunities because he wants what every parent wants for their children is a better future for them to enjoy. Even though the parents won't get to enjoy it, They want their children to have a better life, and that is enough for them. And now he's crying because that's at risk. No. That's his dream, is to be together with his family again one day. He's not working hard for any material product or purchase. He's working hard so that his blood, his family, just so he could hug them again and bring them over. And now that's being at risk because somebody stole something from him.
Right.
And now the people that's supposed to be helping him is calling him a fucking chink and saying and looking at him less of a man. Don't worry about it. Why you crying? You just got arrested. And I know this happened like 2 decades ago, but damn it, it's like we keep recycling the same bullshit,
Well, that's why. But even now, people are saying, well, Chinese people don't fight back. They don't speak up. Well, if you were them, what would you do? If there's a pattern of that, what would you do? Mm-hmm. So I think, especially, Chinese American elected officials, I really hope that they take to heart to understand the people that they're fighting for, right? Stop answering to your masters, the political machine. Mm-hmm. Just remember that one day, that we all have that one day in our life that we got up in the morning and want to do something right. And if you change, think about that one day, because right now I hear people sitting and saying, well, Chinese people don't fight. Maybe there are other reasons, right? Like right. The case in this guy, right? Not that they don't want to fight.
And then when they do fight,
no one
listens.
Well,
in that specific case with the 89-year-old grandma, right?
Absolutely. And same here. They're like saying to me, hey, I have more Asian lawyers calling me, and some, I'm not going to embarrass them, but some entity who's supposed to be represent all the Asian lawyers say, well, it really doesn't meet the definition of a hate crime. I'm like, you know what? Start your own freaking petition and say it's not a hate crime. Put your name on it. And you know what else? If you really feel that strongly about it, it is you to use your legal understanding to change the law. Because the intention of it is to protect people. It's not doing it. It's not protecting your people. So stop telling me that the law is, it should not be a hate crime. Then fix it. I said, thank God you guys are not around during the Chinese exclusion year. Otherwise, we would still.
Oh my God!
Remember that too was a law.
It's those people who see that this is not wrong.
Right, because Chinese. You're absolutely right about that, Don. Because the Chinese Exclusion Act was made into law to purposely
prevent the Chinese from coming over.
Yeah. Right. So I'm like, hey, our ancestors fought it and they get it overturned. But then now, in the year 2020, I'm hearing, with all the legal training, you guys are telling me this stuff. Well, thank goodness there's another team of lawyers who are working with me on that case. Beautiful. But the same situation with the street vendors. When I brought it up to elected officials back then, they said to me, but she did violate the law. I'm like, who wrote the freaking law, right? That the fact that she cannot collect money for her husband who is a wheelchair bound but have a legitimate license just because she collect money and you arrested her. And I said, do you ever go beyond that one step? When she's get arrested, her husband is still wheelchair bound on the street. Other people have to pick the stuff up for him. Mm-hmm. People just don't. I said, don't just go for that title. If you really care about their lives, look at what their life is like. Right? And then the other thing they would say is like, oh, but she's all right though, physically. And I'm like, really? Is that what the lawyer said?
Is that what the Asian lawyer group said?
Some of the lawyer group and some of the other people. Even if you look at the report.
She's all right though?
But she's all right. And I'm like,
what are you talking about?
Right?
I mean, like, how about the emotional trauma?
Exactly.
You're talking about physically, she might not be showing any physical bruises or anything like that.
Thank God she was able to act.
Yeah, she was a spry 90-year-old woman, was able to stop the flames from spreading. How about the trauma, the emotional trauma, the mental trauma?
People are calling me, hey, some elected officials are calling in and said, you're putting the victim at risk. I said, no, you're putting her at risk. And I said, hey, I got to respect her as a person. Just because she's 90 doesn't mean that, I treat her any different. So when China Mac or MC Jin or Daniel Wu said, hey, can I speak to her? What's my responsibility? I'm not here to shield her from, hey, would you like to speak to these guys? Mm-hmm. Well, first she says, who are they? I'm like, well, right. Same question here, right? So, you know,
Right, because you didn't know who these guys were.
No.
Any of these Asian celebrities.
yeah, I really, you know, so sorry guys, I don't. My daughter does. But anyway, she said, oh, it's pretty cool. You
Different
talk to them.
generation.
Different generation.
Yeah.
But my point is that in her case, she said, yeah, I want to talk to them, right? And when China Mac was there, and he was very respectful. Hey, can I take a photo? She says, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very respectful. Hey, can I put you on video? And that's when she said to them you know, what you know, that she would march with them if it wasn't for a problem with her legs, right? And then people start telling me, hey, you know, Don, you put your grandma at risk, as if I'm promoting. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm not promoting anybody. We live in this country. She wants to express herself. That's my job to express it. The family wants to have it in the center because want some privacy. That's why we provided the facilities, and that's it. But it's sad that, you know, there are people in our own community who are more worrying about rocking the boat. Now, if these are the old school Chinatown guys, one thing, but these are the woke, you know.
Right.
I said, what's up with that?
Right.
You know, you guys keep saying, oh, the model minority myth. Well, you're living it, man.
Yeah.
You're telling me
You're
don't say
acting
it.
it.
You're
You're
acting
acting
it, right?
It's funny because they say one thing and they do exactly what they're complaining about. You know, so it's so easy to sit back behind your computer and just complain all day and look at everything that's wrong and just pick and choose which ones and criticize. And then but not having to actually physically go out there and put your actions to any of those words.
Or at least learn more about your own community. You know, learn more about, like I explained, this is the life. This is why the guys were upset. That's why he was crying. Not because of fear, not because he's weak, because he's strong, right? So, you know, the whole thing with this whole fundraising, that drama, right? Oh, I'm still getting email. People are like, oh, what do you do with the money? And I said, listen, man, it's $10,000, you know, in the grand scheme of things, not that much. Let's be honest about it, all right? So, you know, especially when you guys pay $8 for a scoop of ice cream, don't be bitching about a $10,000 GoFundMe.
Yeah. That really is not a lot.
No, it's not.
And the $10,000 GoFundMe was for what? Chinatown.
For Chinatown. And then also initially was for the grandma.
Right.
Right. But I'm like, wow, you guys cannot look past the fact that this is really someone's good intention, but you have to look at the dark side.
It's not like we're giving the money. They're not giving the money away. They're actually spending the money within the community, buying the goods. So it actually goes into community, you know, stays in the community and helps the community.
Yeah, and like when they order, like earlier, I ordered 800, 600 cake and stuff like that from different bakeries. And they said, well, how big a discount? And I'm like, no, they're supporting you. Retail, it's fine.
No discount.
Right? No discount, right?
Full
Whatever
price.
you do, full price. And I think that's really, people need to think about that. And again, you know, that speaks to the bushel of crap, right? Someone want to do something, and instead of, you know, you should say, hey, is 10,000 enough? Maybe you need to do
Instead
more.
of pushing you up,
Right?
they're grabbing.
They're asking the wrong questions. They're
Right.
asking the wrong questions. That's right. Is 10,000 enough? That's the right question to ask.
Right.
Yeah. And right now, I've seen a lot of organizations, volunteers setting things up in Chinatown. Like, for example, I just saw like flyers to go up for a food crawl in Chinatown.
Right.
And that's coming up in September. You know, shout out to them because I forget the organization, but shout out to them for doing something like that because
That's
they're
awesome.
being proactive. You're not complaining about other organizations. You're not complaining about, you know, what Chinatown, the community is not getting. You're actually proactively setting up events so that you can create action from that, right? And save Chinatown.
Yeah, that was like, you know, that's the key thing, that these guys are really working in the community. So there's one group that, you know, we were delivering meals to seniors and in Brooklyn from Home Crest Community Service. We did, I think, 36,000 meals so far.
Oh, wow.
Right? Because we want the seniors not to have to come out.
Right.
So one group came up to me and said, not in Chinatown group, one other group came to me and says, hey, I can donate a couple of thousand meals to you. And I said, really? I can do 5,000 every week, right, for the next 4 weeks. So I said to him, I said, where are the meals coming from? He goes, oh, our kitchen, we cook them. I said, great. Well, who paid for that? Oh, we raised money. So I said, so you raise money for your restaurant to cook, and then you want to bring it to Brooklyn. I said, how about this? How about if you, and they raised like millions. I'm not talking about some small amount, right? It's a pretty well-known organization. So I said, how about this? Why don't you raise some money and do what I'm doing? Support the local Chinese restaurant in Bay Parkway to cook the food for for the people, right? Why go to the step? I said, if I take your meals, that means I'm not giving business to this restaurant in Bay Parkway. So turning it down.
And plus, you're taking meals from wherever community they were serving already.
Well, that's the whole point. I said, we're not here. We're not a competition. Yeah. We don't want, again, the whole idea. We're not here for handout. We're not here just because we just need a meal to stay. When we get to that point, I'll take it. I'm not going to be, tell you, but there are many other options, right? We're able to raise $200,000 for a lot of private foundations, donations to pay with 63,000 meals. Every single penny went into buying meals, and we kept this restaurant open throughout the entire pandemic. They're still open now. Did not close, hire more people, right? That's the example. And I think when China Mac decided to do that, I'm like, yeah, man, that's spot on, right? You guys are doing the same, putting money right into people's hand. Make sure that people can. So we don't need this charity. Let me come in here. Let me give you food. So I said to him, look, if your food is not purchased from this local community, don't do it, because you're really hurting the small business here. By you giving stuff away from Chicago, because when I saw some of those meals that are coming from Chicago, frozen stuff, I'm like, Chicago have their own problem, man. Feed the people in Chicago. Right. Don't raise money using Asian Americans as victims. Right. And then because of who you are, that you get all the props and you get all the news media to talk about you. I said, no, I don't need you. I'm here to make sure that our people get fed, and I will make sure that our small business are taken care of too. So I turned down 20,000 meals. I don't need it. Mm-hmm. Don't need it. You need to stand up. Yeah. I don't need no charity from you. Right.
And you did those extra levels of steps looking to see, like, all right, is this for social points? Is this what's the real agenda here?
So we're growing. I think again, that's why I'm like, so thank you for, having the opportunity to talk to you guys. But media is changing. The platforms are changing. So now maybe you guys will begin, and you and other folks will be able to tell our story the way that can be told. Because other people, they going to recycle the whole thing, right? It's always the same. If you ask the average person, they think all Chinese restaurants, they have neon lights and have chop suey on it, right?
Yep.
So,
you see, as long as you see it in the movies, that's where
the neon lights.
That's where they get their Chinatown information from.
Right.
Is whatever they see in the movies.
Right. It's all the neon lights and, all excited women and all kind of crazy stuff. Right. Men's all gangsters or wife beaters. Like, enough already.
Or nerds.
Right. Or nerds.
Mathematicians.
But I want to go back on that, the whole new media, right? Right now, I mean, like, I see a lot of the younger generation, right, coming out, organizing, setting up events. And I'm thinking, what happened to the associations? What happened to all those groups that were back then were helping Chinese immigrants come in and be welcomed and have a stable footing when they came here, to New York. So what happened to those associations, and why aren't they working together? I mean, we should be all working together, younger generation, older generation.
Yeah, there's certainly a gap there.
There is a gap, and I know for a fact that the younger generation are coming back into Chinatown, setting up new businesses, and kind of updating, the look of Chinatown. But
the look, the feel, the vibe, but
it's very inviting.
Still very Chinatown.
Yeah, still very China, because these are kids that grew up in the neighborhood and coming back and creating new businesses.
There is a gap between the older generation and the younger generation, and with the associations where they used to be very involved with the community. It doesn't seem as apparent anymore in terms of them taking the lead and everyone following.
I think, like I said, I being raised by a single dad, after school, I would be hanging out at the family association until he got off work, and then we'd go home together. And on weekends, I spent all day there. So I got to know what it is. I from my perspective, they're a misrepresented
In what way?
I don't think a lot of people, this associated with tongs. There's this criminal element that these guys are somewhat, gangsters
Or mafia.
or mafia,
Triad. Mhm.
right? Or just super conservative, disciplinarians, and that's just completely not true, right? And I think that and this is why it worries me that even in 2020, if we continue to allow these false narrative, and for all the younger generation, so to speak, who are there now, do your research. Don't just take up something that, even, I'll say it right now, even the MOCA, the Museum of Chinese, some of their facts are not correct.
The Chinese Museum.
The Chinese Museum. And I don't think because they're bad people, but hey, if they, stories are always told on the sides of the victors, right? These are the guys who are in control.
Right.
So you're going to continue heading down that path. You're going to pretty much, it's worse. When I read it the first time, I'm like, oh, this is bullshit. I know that's not what the Family Association is about. I know this is not what the Chinatown's about. And it's one thing when I read it written by a non-Asian, a white guy who wrote this, and and
I said it was all basically a criminal element.
Right.
It was all gangsters and.
But now when you had Chinese people saying it, right? Oh yeah, the bloody triangle. I'm like, dude, do your homework, right? Just think about common sense.
We're actually right next to it.
Right next to it, right next to it.
Bloody triangle right now.
I said, why we keep saying? I said, just because someone called it that. I said, just think about it logically. There are not too many Asians to begin with, Chinese in China to begin with. If they were really killing each other, who the hell was doing all the laundry, doing all the restaurant, doing all the stuff? They cannot be killing that many people. Are there no crime? And I'm in denial? Absolutely not. But to say that is the most dangerous, blah, blah, blah. I mean, come on. You look at it, the bloody triangle, and people will say to me, there's two Pegasus that are hanging outside, one on that point to Doria Street, right?
Right.
One's on there. And people would say to me, so when I do a walking tour of Chinatown, people would say, what is that? Is the Pegasus something mythical in China? I said, no. That is a symbol of gentrification. All right. The two freaking bars inside the bloody triangle said the taxis, the Uber guy can't find it. So let's hang something there that they can identify.
As a landmark.
That's a landmark.
Okay.
Right? And I'm like, come on, guys, do your freaking
Those
homework.
bars are pretty good, though.
They're fine.
I've been in those bars.
And I'm with it, So hey, listen, we want to. I don't think we need to be only a particular. I think it's natural that it's only a problem. What I see the problem is when they use when they marketing using this negative stereotype that hurts our community. Right. That's where I draw the line. Right. Listen, we're not all purists. But when you keep saying this, the only thing that people know about is, bloody triangle, gangs of New York. They was like, come on.
It's obviously safer now than it ever was. And when you use that to market, if people come by, they take,
No, I went down that path. I went down that path. This other author who wrote the book, and I said, hey, listen, I would love to have a conversation with you about the Tong Wars and all those stuff, right? He said, oh, it's all based on facts. I'm like, what facts? He goes, based on the news report. I said, yeah, read the news report now. If you watch Fox 5, you think the president is second coming of Christ, but then you watch MSNBC. So when you wrote your story, I told this guy, which one was it Fox or was it MSNBC? Mm-hmm. Right, so don't tell me this. So I just want my daughter's generation, do a little fact checking.
Right. The real history.
Real history. Look behind the facade. Right. People walk down Chinatown. They only see the streets. They don't ever see above the signage. There are real people who live here for 175 years.
Now, for those, right,
tenement buildings.
And for the people listening, can you explain how the Bloody Triangle get its name and what are the cross streets?
So the Bloody Triangle, and again, I think we need to fight this and change it.
Rephrase it.
We gotta. Oh no. Well, it would be a way to really
give it a more appropriate, accurate name.
This is the moment, right? This is the moment where we're questioning. Are we accepting criminal justice as it is? Are we accepting the status quo? Are we accepting people who decide to say, hey, Chinatown is known as the gangs and stuff like this and all this stuff? So Bloody Triangle, they're saying it's a pretty racist thing that they that was referenced in the Gangs of New York in that novel. People think that's history, but it's real. I think it's a novel. It's a right. It's docudrama at best. So they basically said at this corner, because a Chinese person's eye cannot see around the corner, that's why they kill each other, right? That was the reference. I said it's a pretty damn
That's pretty
racist thing.
Yeah.
But our people, do they say, do they object to that? No. They continue to perpetrate. The other thing was this guy said, one police captain said, back in the day, say, this is the most dangerous place in all, and that was it. He made that one reference in one newspaper article.
In what year? Like, was that the most dangerous place?
No.
Was,
when I grew up in Little Chinatown, walking the street, we used to see bodies on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see bodies on the street.
Yeah.
Right, and people talk about stop and frisk. I said when I went to school, I've been stopped and frisked plenty of times.
Absolutely, me too.
All right,
Me too. Just walking to school, I've been stopped and frisked, and I'm just a little boy, 12, 13 years old.
Yep.
And I get thrown against the wall, like shoved.
Yep. If you
and
walk
stopped and
if
frisked
you
very
just
aggressively.
walk straight up like a person, you must be a gangster. You're not supposed to walk like that, right?
Or even if you look a police officer in the eyes,
Yeah.
they would react a certain way towards you.
I remember. You remember that Music Palace used to be a
Yeah.
theater, and then
Right
there was some
on,
shooting.
Right on
Bowery and
Grand?
Hester, right?
Hester, yeah.
Bowery and
Hester,
Hester.
that's right.
So I used to have to take the bus there to go up to NYU, go up to West 4th Street. I'm standing there. Next thing you know, a bunch of cops just shove me against the wall, and says, "Put your hands against the wall."
and you had a
Right.
book bag and everything. You look like you're going to
Yeah.
school.
Right.
Okay.
So they go, well, I had my hair's kind of long then, so they like just shove me against the wall and says, guns drawn.
Yeah.
Let me see all 10 fingers. And you better pray, motherfucker, you have 10 fingers. You can't make this stuff up. Right? I'm like, all right. Then I turn around. I'm like, what's going on, officers? Hey, there was some shooting here. I said, don't ask me. I'm going to go to school. So they go, hey, let me see some ID. So I decided to have a little fun with them, right? So I was like, here's my library card and here's my American Express. Don't leave home without it, right? So,
God,
right?
love you, man.
So, but like that shit happens. I'm like, come
It
on,
does.
man.
Yeah, it does.
Enough already.
Yeah.
So, but when people hear like who's getting it worse, and I really don't, race is an issue, but I think class structure, classism, it's a much bigger issue. And
Absolutely.
That
Because
is where you go.
That even happens within our own people. Right. And everybody's own people doesn't matter what color you are, whites, blacks, Asians, Hispanics, Latino, right? There's classism within that, and people look down on their own people for whatever reason. And, a lot of it, it's generational wealth or you're lucky. You're lucky to be born to a wealthy family. You're lucky to be raised with two parents. You're lucky to be raised with a supportive group, a community. So luck has a lot of factor to play into it rather than who you are as a person. Because a lot of people look down on people of lower class as if they're lazy, right? And that's the reason why they're still stuck there. And that's not always the case. I know sometimes there are cases like that, but that's not always the case. Luck has a lot to do with it.
Has everything to do with it. Better lucky than good.
Right.
That's why I tell my daughter, that's how everyone, better lucky than good. Right? Because you got a lot of smarter people, but they just don't have that opportunity. It doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
And, so going back to the association, right? If people need to start fighting for them, right? People need to start fighting for them. Who are they? Why are they associations? Because the Chinese Exclusion Act, we are not human. Chinese Americans are, even if you're born here, you are not allowed to own a bank account. You cannot go to school. So Chinese public school is not, right now they teach Chinese, but back then it actually is a public school only for Chinese because they're segregated, right? So it wasn't like, it's no joke. So for housing, these family associations were the suppliers of housing for this community. But because they are not a nonprofit, right? You look at other communities, the Jewish communities further out, the Irish community not too far, Italian community, they all have nonprofits. Chinese association, they do all more of the same kind of stuff, but yet they pay 100% of the tax
Why is that?
because they register as an association. Because back then there's no such thing as a nonprofit. And then also part of the tradition for so long, it's like, all right, are we gonna change the charter now, and dig up this whole can of worm, or does it make sense for us to form a new group, a new entity that can benefit that?
Is that what's happening?
That's what's happening.
Because it's just smarter financially, and they'll be able to have more resources to actually support.
Because we need to adjust. We don't have to lose our own identity and our history to be part of
The new world.
the new world, right? That's why we form Home Crest Community Services as a nonprofit. We could easily be
Another
some association, but that doesn't fit the time anymore. Just like this is the time that I think the BLM movement is beyond just a movement, right? Obviously, it really calls the question for those of us who are not African American to say, and like the grandma said, we're inspired by it. And we begin to question not just that one incident, but the overall how society have been treating us for all these years. And this is the time, I think, for Chinese Americans to think back and say, hey, who are these associations? Next time you walk down here, look up and say, hey, are they all the criminals that the gangsters, the mafia they talk about? And that was the one thing that, and here's something for people to think about. Well, there used to be so many gambling halls in Chinatown.
All over the place.
All over the place. Well, what happened to them? They got legalized. It's now Atlantic City, right?
OTB.
OTB, right? So that's my point. It's like government know what's going on. They didn't see it as a problem. They're like, oh, shit, you can make money off gambling. You know what? We become the house.
Right.
We're going to do OTB.
You're going to collect taxes.
We're going to collect tax on it.
Yeah.
We're going to so, if I have a choice, as long as it's going to be gambling, might as well have some down here.
Right.
Just say.
Right.
But my point is really look beyond. I think I'm blessed to grow up in this period where I got to see that change. And you begin to, after a while, you ask, what happened? Like one day there's all these gambling halls, next day they're gone.
I know.
Right?
It's crazy.
Because Atlantic City,
Yeah.
because now it's legalized.
Right.
So the law can change.
We're identifying these issues, and we need to adjust these laws so that it can be more appropriate for this current day and age.
Yeah, because the law was written back in the day where COVID didn't happen. And then COVID happened. The pandemic happened. And then you saw a rise in, hate crimes. I'm going to call it what it is. Hate crimes against Asians. Not just Chinese people, Asians.
Right.
And these laws that were written, 20, 30 years ago, or even longer, that are not appropriate for this time.
Yeah, and I said to them, it worked for it worked for anti-Semitism, right? I mean, I'm not saying we don't have that problem anymore. I'm just saying that when there's a crime against, anti-Semitic crime, we hear about it. Anything that happened in the, gay community, we hear about it, right? LGBTQ still don't get it, but hey, but those are the advocates that fought for that. And thank them, right? Yeah. But it's not working for us. Right? It's not working for the Asian community. It's not working for the Arabs, and it's not working for the Islamic community, right?
Why isn't it working for Islamic, Arabs, or Asians?
Right? Because they're saying, like, the one thing I keep getting from them is, if no words are spoken, then it cannot be a hate crime. So I said, does that mean that if I have someone who's hearing impaired, he can never be a victim of a hate crime, right? It's like even our own lawyers are telling me this kind of nonsense, right? And I think we need to, there's definitely a loophole, and it needs to be closed. And then the second question people will say is like, why is it so important? Why is it that your company want to make this a hate crime? So maybe I can charge you with something worse in the penal system and to really get. And I said, well, that's when you don't understand. I said, you point out exactly the problem, right? Because you're still looking at it as a crime perpetrated against an individual and not as a group, not a community. So you catch this one guy and you're going to do everything, and wherefore resort to, justice in other ways. I'm not even talking about what happened after you get the catch the guy. But all I'm saying is having the right classification makes everyone aware that this group, right,
It's being targeted. Yeah.
Muslims, Arabs, Chinese Americans, Asian Americans being targeted.
Right.
And maybe we will get,
It raises more awareness.
right? And maybe we can get preventive, because to fight this needs preventive, right?
And this started back in January.
Yeah.
The rise in all these attacks against Asians just happened in January. And it just recently, they had the Asian anti, hate
crime task force, right?
which is not even, from what we've been.
It's not
even
legitimate.
It's a volunteer group.
volunteer.
It's a volunteer
exactly.
group. They
It's a
don't have their
volunteer
own
group.
office. I mean,
Right. They still answer to their own command. They don't really, have
Yeah.
to. So, but it's a step move in the right direction. But again, I think we need to say, hey, what do we do to protect all people?
right. We need to
including
protect the
us.
Muslims, the Arabs,
The Muslim, the Arabs,
the
right?
Asians, everyone, the Latinos,
Yep.
the blacks.
Transgenders. They should not,
transgender,
no
yeah.
one should walk out and be afraid to leave their home. It's a pretty sad statement during the press conference, and I'm proud of Deputy Inspector Liu. He said it on camera. Even my own families and friends are afraid to leave their home.
Absolutely.
I'm like, come on. He's a deputy inspector, right? Isn't it time for us to do something? Isn't it time for us to make sure we got the right resources to do it, right?
And even as deputy inspector, he can only do so much,
Yeah. Well,
right?
because still, I mean, we're moving, I think with everyone's support, we are moving the needle, if you will, right?
Right.
It's not a hate crime, but the hate crime task force is
But we're
investigating.
moving the needle, yes, but I just feel like it's not enough.
not even close.
It's not enough, and it's not. And I almost feel like, okay, fine, just to get you guys to shut the hell up.
Well,
This is what it is, and they're gonna put a fancy bow around it, and then when you open up and look inside, you're like, wait, what the fuck is this shit?
Yeah.
It's not what we wanted. It's not what we're asking for. This Asian hate that you put on social media, you put this all over the news networks, right? I saw this on the 10 o'clock news, primetime news, all over the place, and I thought to myself, yes, they're hate crime unit, so they can allocate more resources
Right.
and address these issues like they would for any other human being.
That's right.
But when you open up the box and you look inside of it, it's not what it is. It's a volunteer group, because when you open up a group, they're supposed to allocate all these resources to it and actually fund it and put some money behind it and give them an office just so they can do their work. They can do their due diligence. And you mean to tell me that this department is just a volunteer group?
And then with
It's just
and with
it's
the
like
NY
saying, how do you feel if your community and you're going, hey, there's a possible chance of fire being lit in one of these homes, so therefore we need a fire department. We need a fire department in this community. We don't need it in the next town because they won't get here in time. Everything's going to be burned to shreds. We need a fire department in our community to put out a fire literally when it happens. And then they're going, hey guys, we did it for you. You guys have a fire department. And then when you look behind it, guess what? These guys don't have their own firehouse. They don't have their own fire trucks. It's a volunteer group. Whoever wants to fucking fight fire,
Show up,
put out the fucking fire. What the fuck?
Yeah, I think the things that, we're not that smart, but we've seen how other community concerns are addressed, right? Let's put more cops on the subways that a lot of Asians ride those trains, right? I mean, this is the problem. 4 or 5 o'clock at this point, all the storefronts become to empty out because there is safety in numbers. So that's why these guys are now all leaving to take the train together to go home.
Mm-hmm.
So
and a lot of them are also they're armed.
Yeah.
They have some sort of weapon, whether it's a gun or a knife or pepper spray. And I'm just concerned if they use it, because guess what? They use it in self-defense somehow, and I'm gonna knock on wood, Don. Somehow it'll be the Asian person's fault, where they use too much violence to protect themselves, and now they're being charged with attempted murder or something else, right? where somebody else started it and we finish it, or that person finishes it, and then now we're charged with whatever they're going to put on it. I just hope that doesn't happen. That's my concern. And yes, I know in New York specifically, or a lot of other states, having a firearm is highly illegal, right? But if these guys are freaking,
Criminals
concerned about being burned, they're concerned about getting jumped and randomly punched in the face, getting knocked out, and potentially, being hit in a street fight, your head landing on concrete, that's the concern.
It's game over, man.
It's game over. You're done. You'll never be the same person again. You're concussed, and it's a wrap for you.
At that point, it's too late. I mean, like when I hear like sometimes that the police force is like a reactive department group. They should be actively policing.
It's not too late. It's beyond that. You need a new word, but they're flagrantly late because it's been happening. It is happening.
Right. We need reform, real reform. That's why, like, even in Chinatown, you see there's a lot of people who, people call them homeless, right? And like you said, you're going to see a lot of the ladies giving money to these guys. They don't like, let me, like Upper East Side, Upper West Side, who doesn't want them out. Folks in Chinatown actually feel sorry for them, give them money. And I'm proud of that in many ways. But at the same time, the city needs to stop calling these guys homeless. We all need a home. But they need more than that. Some of these guys really need these services. And we're forced to the point where I think in our community, I think maybe due to language or just how we communicate. And I think this is where it divides the Asian and Chinese American community with other communities. Because the first thing they think of is, let's call the cops. And my reaction is like, what's a cop going to do? Right? I said to them, start changing that. Start saying, Bill de Blasio, Mayor de Blasio, where are the social workers? Where are the people? And I don't mean that in being disrespectful, try to be funny. I really meant that. But
call the politician.
Call the politician. But we're forced to the point.
Can make change, because the local police officer, even if they can empathize and they feel for you in that moment, they can't make that change. They can't put their name on a piece of paper and restructure something. They can't, as much as they want to help, they can stop the crime. That's their job function, and to protect the law. But the people that actually can update and do something, put their name, who's authorized to sign something, put a bill and have it pass, those are the people we need to speak to. Right,
to make sure there's services, real service for these guys. We don't want them to be all pushed down here because, but it needs to be a solution. Pitting this situation against this community. And then now we're victimized again and say, hey, Chinese people are pro-police. No, I don't think they didn't know what to ask for. The only thing they know is to call the police. Doesn't mean they're pro-police, right? Yeah. They're human. Walk around. I'm not making this up. Come down to Chinatown.
Why does that have a negative connotation, pro-police? It automatically assumes that all police officers are evil or negative, and you're pro that, right? I have a problem with that type of verbiage for police officers too, because I know a lot of police officers that are really good police officers. They joined the force to literally stop crime. Yeah,
I think they're given, I think my good friend T.Y. Chang kind of put it this way. He says, every community wants these two things: respectful policing and no crimes. Doesn't matter which neighborhood. As anyone, we want respectful policing and we don't want any crime. No different from a rich neighborhood or any other neighborhood. But somehow, so I'm for respectful policing, right? Just don't start shooting people for no good reason. Right. Don't push me against the wall and say, make sure I have 10 fingers, right? Don't put a gun on me when I try to go to school.
Don't call me chink, or don't call me a racial slur.
Don't call me a racial slur.
But here's the thing. At the same time, I don't think that's the majority of police officers, right? The majority of police officers aren't going out calling people, being racist, saying racist names, shooting random people. I don't think that's a majority. Yes, there's a percentage, and it's always the assholes that get most of the attention, that gives everybody. It's the bad apples that give all the good apples a bad reputation.
I
right?
totally agree with
and
that
it's the
one.
same thing with us, like the associations, right? You're saying, they're known for the tongues, but
Right.
you're saying no. There's a majority of the associations
Provide housing.
that provide housing. They don't have any
Employment.
affiliations with any sort of mafia or triad. They're literally out there doing something that would be currently classified this day and age as a non-profit for the community.
That's right.
So that's my idea with the policing, because anyone that, and I've gotten arguments with my friends about this, or debates, I should say, respectful debates, because we don't personally attack each other. We always stick on the topic because they have a difference in opinion than I do. And I don't think all police officers are bad. I do believe that there's a lot that needs to be changed, but they're limited by what they can actually achieve, right? Because at the end of the day, they need to follow their job function that their supervisor lays out for them, right? So that said, there's a lot of them that are good police officers. And yes, there also is quite a few that when we hear about these shootings, or when we hear about these racist words being, or they go in to report a rape or hate crime.
Yeah, that
where
actually take it seriously.
Where they get shamed instead.
Right, and tell them
what
to
were
go
you-
home.
Yeah, well, go home. What were you wearing? Also, you totally deserve to.
Right.
I was like, excuse me, no. You can't change that. So there are police officers out there where you're going, how did they even get this job, right? How did they even get this? But there's a bunch of other good police officers out there.
Yeah.
Because if that wasn't the case, would you dial 911?
Right. Well, even
Would you
from-
roll the dice and dial 911? If there's a crime happening to you right now, if a bunch of people showed up, I'm going to call 911 because I believe that there's more good police officers than there are bad.
Right.
I think they're going to help me fight the criminals standing across
I
from
don't
me.
even think it's like the individual police officers. Like it's an individual police officer's issue. It's more a systemic issue where this police
It's
force.
both.
This police force is hiring these inept police officers, and they're causing these issues. And to me, it's like the only way you can get change is highlighting and putting those bad things under a microscope for change to happen.
There's a police officer named Sonny and Louie. They used to be partners. They walked the streets, right? Sonny and Louie. And I'm forever grateful. Who knows how my life would turn out, right? So one day I decide to cut class, and I'm walking down the block. And then back then I have the nightstick. And I
Right.
got tapped on my butt. And he goes, hey, where you going? And I'm like, you're not supposed to be here, right? And I said, yeah. He goes, go back to school, or I'm going to tell your grandfather. Now, I knew he would tell my grandfather.
He
Back
knew what
then,
the buttons to push.
He knew, right? But the thing is, he wasn't making it up.
Oh,
Right? He
okay.
can go up to the family associate and tell my grandfather and say, hey, I saw Don walking in the street. So then when I saw him on Sunday, he went up there and he goes, oh, Don, give me some tea. Right? So I get him some tea, and he says, well, not these type, because they were not really drinking hot tea. They were drinking drinks that look like tea, if you will, right? They were just filling in the bottle of the back. It's the same cop. And he'll wink at me. He goes, I am forever thankful, Sonny and Louie, right? These are the NYPD that if they let me that one encounter, I never cut class again
Yeah.
because I knew he will talk to my grandfather. There's no question about that. So I mean, can we get back to those simpler days? Why does everything have to be so like
aggressive,
Aggressive
right? Where they're
or
over
nothing.
policing. And I know it's tough when you're fighting crime and everybody fucking hates you, but you have to use some empathy in some situations. In a lot of situations, you have to apply empathy. I think that's what separates us from being a machine. You
Right.
know, you have to, because if you don't and you overuse your force or you don't use proper discretion, then yes, you're going to get situations like this where people hate you. And then it's a shame because, now a lot of good cops are going, well, what's the point? Right. And then people that good or potential good police officers that were excited at one point to be a police officer, they had dreams, when I grow up, I'm going to be a cop. Now they're looking at this whole situation like, hell no, I'm not touching this with a 10-foot pole. I'm not going anywhere near. So now we're going to lose those good police officers. So who's left? We get the people that want to abuse power, that want to have a gun and want to have a license to kill. And now we got a majority of those people that want to be police officers. And that's when the 911 calls will stop. That's when people will have local militias. That's when gangs will start, because then they know, I'm going to make the difference. I'm going to get this group of guys here and we're going to run this. And that's going to be the problem now. And we can't have that. We cannot have that.